Back in the day, that day being in the late 90s, I'm not old, you're old, shut up. Knights and Merchants was a game that I played a ton of on my dad's good old Windows 95 PC. To be honest, the PC was a bag of wank. It used to play Age of Empires at like 3 frames per second, but back then I was young, didn't know any better, and I still loved the crap out of it. But now, over 20 years later, I still play Knights and Merchants a hell of a lot. Originally released in 1998, Knights and Merchants is a real-time strategy game based in the medieval days. Not that you wouldn't know that, as it's like heavily implied in the title. On the most recent version of the game, which is around £5 here in the UK on Steam, there are 2 campaigns with 34 missions. There's also a skirmish mode to get up against the AI, and also some multiplayer against a friend. It's the standard RTS shindig. Build buildings for specific people like woodcutters, bakers, blacksmiths, etc. Gain food and supplies, keep expanding, build an army, and defeat the enemy in war. I personally find the building gameplay along with the artistic style and the music incredibly relaxing. I did back in 98 when I was 10, and I still do now at 33. Each member of your little town has their own animations and jobs that they'll perform, and eventually they'll go hungry and need to head to the tavern to eat. A tavern that you'll need to keep stocked up, so starting with producing food is an absolute must, as there's no fast forward button to make things go any quicker. It kind of just goes at its own pace. Speaking of food though, that does bring me to one of the couple of gripes I do have with the game. Even though I do love it, I have to critique it fairly. Your soldiers will need to be fed too, which takes time and servants to do, and of course, if the servants are too busy walking the Green Mile to feed your troops, they aren't shifting goods for your town, from the places from pillar to post, so taking grain to the windmill to be ground down to flour, to then be taken to the baker to be turned into bread, etc, etc. That and the servants can only feed one troop member at a time, so it's kind of a long-winded process. Nevertheless, besides needing to feed like gremlins, the troops and the combat is really good, and more often than not, careful planning and positioning will see you winning most fights, even if you have the lesser troops. Who'd have thunk, right? By positioning archers up high to rain down arrows whilst your swordsmen or axe maniacs charge in is great to watch and play out, as when people die they kind of disappear into skeleton-like ghosty beings, which is a pretty cool little animation. There's a good variety of troops to use, from the axe-wielding militia, which are the basic standard ones, to standard axe and shield guys, swordsmen, archers, pikemen, horsemen, knights, etc. But of course you'll need to supply all the weapons and recruits to build an army, so you'll need to make sure you've got plenty of wood and metal and mining operations and all sorts that comes with the RTS shenanigans. I've had a couple of hard crashes, spaced far apart, and like I said before, there's no way to speed up the gameplay, but if you like a relaxing real-time strategy to grind on, it does tick a lot of those boxes. Knights and Merchants is a charming RTS, and one that I've held in high regard for 23 years, besides a few aged settings and the occasional crash, and having to feed your troops more times than I've had to feed my 2 kids combined over the Christmas period. It's one of my favourites of the genre. Knights and Merchants gets an 8 out of 10 from me, but that's an 8 out of 10 coming from nostalgia. So bear that in mind. Of course, if you pick this up on Steam and you don't like it, or even if you pick it up on GOG and you don't like it, you can always get your money back. But it's a really cool RTS, and unfortunately you can't really change the aspect ratio of the game. It's pretty much an 800 by 600, so good luck with that one. But thank you very much for watching this review, and I shall catch you on the next one.